I wanted to say something about discomfort and the vital importance of this, and how in our waking up, in our showing up, in our evolution, that we would wish um, that we could do all of this transformation without disrupting our comfort zone, without appearing impolite or inappropriate, without feeling stretched. And it's really those avoidance feelings. I'll just talk back to my experience rather than abstractly. Um, I notice it in making these videos that I still feel a little bit of a cringe or twinge of something when I see them appear on my Facebook page, and I know that's part of my practice because it's helping me to get over that. But my discomfort is around the possibility that someone might be annoyed by seeing my face again, seeing yet another video by me, hearing that I have yet another set of thoughts on a subject, and basically having an opinion of myself that's so large that I feel deserving of screen time. And that's very real for me, that I confront every time I post one of these. And of course there's that level of internal dialogue, and yet there's all of the truth from my whole being and the words from my heart that I have avoided and tried to avoid saying for years, but it just keeps coming up, and I'm now committed to actually listening and then actually taking action on what wells up in my heart. The things I'm called to speak about based on my experience, my real experience, not the edited experience that makes for a polite social conversation or fitting in with whatever group or setting I find myself in. And of course, those are all assumptions, because as long as I don't actually test by trusting how I show up with all of my experience as being okay, I never find out the answer. It lives as a doubt, and a question inside me that's unresolved, and I live from that doubt rather than from the trust of knowing from my own experience what it's like to show up fully with feeling and experience and my true perspective. So one example that was recent was the 2 nights ago I went to a year-end party for a group of women artists. It was awesome. It was at an artist studio loft in Oakland, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a whole new vision of living that hasn't even shown up in my imagination, but it's awesome. Like one big, huge open room with art making, and then a loft bedroom, and that's it. So it immediately registered as a possibility, like, oh my gosh, this exists right here. And there it is. And we started to talk about, so the owner of the studio teaches art to elementary school students in a neighborhood right near her in Oakland. So it's full of a lot of very dysfunctional homes and alcoholic parents, and various situations where she shared that she has suicidal 8-year-olds that come to her classes. And it struck me as she was telling these stories, and she tells them in a very matter-of-fact way and very painful things. And I shared with her that it struck me that she's taking in so much, and I asked her what she does to release that from her own, for her own self-care. And it opened up a discussion about burnout the burnout that she sees among the other teachers in the school, the attitude toward burnout by the principal in the school, and the resistance that she faces in terms of addressing it, or the possibility of even bringing art making to the staff as a remedy for self-care is totally disallowed in that environment. And it was fascinating that through my question, which was based on my own experience with being in that situation of being a teacher and taking in so many family situations and not having an outlet for it and facing my own burnout, that it led to this opening of her own sharing of burnout and her observations of it. And she actually just sent me a follow-up email saying she'd like to talk more about this with me in the new year. So it was an example of me showing up with exactly my perspective and my questions, which come from my particular experience, that aren't pretty, but it's exactly what isn't being talked about that needs to be talked about. So it's the feelings we're avoiding, whether it's discomfort or being seen as whatever in a social setting, that are the actual ones calling us to our healing, our greatest transformation, our greatest potential for creative expression and for changing our world in a way that aligns with our heart's desires. And when we think about that, I just invite you to do that, and I'll just be in my own experience of that. When I think of that, it's always very energizing and inspiring to think of how can I create my world based on an alignment with my heart's desires. It's always, wow. And it's slowly becoming a bigger and bigger way of how I live my life on a daily basis, the new normal, so to speak. That yes, this is how everything is created. It's through our consciousness and acknowledgement of possibility. So we're just believing the story of the doubt versus believing the story of our heart's desires. So to make the transition, we have to break through the wall of doubt that is rooted in the part of ourselves that's conditioned to want things to stay the same way and to live within the same comfort box, even if it actually isn't that great, and continually brings up patterns of discord and discomfort. Not in the same way as stretching into growth, but the patterns of misalignment is often what these old patterns bring up, and then we touch the place, or maybe we see it coming and we turn the other way, or we go down that same pattern and we actually never move through it in a fundamentally new way. So coming back to discomfort, I'm taking in a lot of information the last few days, so I'm feeling a little bit, needing to get into depth of feeling rather than a lot of thoughts. But what I realized about discomfort is that when I'm getting paid to coach someone, a shift that I need to make, and that I see that I now need to make, is that I'm being paid to guide someone, to lead someone to their own edge of discomfort and help them to walk through it and to truly transform it. That's the true service that I invite and with my offering, and yet I also have this tiny bit of fear and resistance about truly doing it and what it will take, and whether they'll get pissed off as I push their buttons and show them where the discomfort is and stay there, not indulge in their desire to avoid it or to skirt around or to, tell me one thing while they're doing other things in the background. And that's a level of courage that I was very in touch with as a violin teacher, because I knew that exactly what needed to be moved through to accomplish certain things, and I just knew that it would be accomplished. There was no question in my mind that whatever kind of resistance was being displayed was not a reason to not do it. It was simply something to work with and work through. And yeah, it did piss some people off, but it also produced amazing results in the people that stayed with it. And the most inspiring results I saw were the people that stayed with that and worked through it and became so much stronger and beautiful because they worked with themselves through their own resistance at a very young age. And I believe that that is something powerful planted within them that will be there forever in whatever they learn. And so now as a coach, yeah, I'm still dealing with a little bit of the surprise of, oh, people actually want what I'm offering. Like, because it's new to my own consciousness that this is possible because I'm walking this path now, and discovering. And so there's things I've lived through, and I share those quite honestly. And yet what I'm seeing right now is the importance of really going there, going for the jugular, as Natalie Goldberg would say. Like, not skirting around it, but people who see my story or see me and then want to come and receive services from me, what they deserve to receive from me in my fullest authenticity and showing up is the leadership to take them to where they need to go, which is exactly what they've been avoiding on their own. And that's the value of having a coach, which is a partnership that says this other set of eyes will love you through that, where you haven't yet been able to love yourself fully. That by my own journey of learning to love myself through that, you can borrow that love until it awakens, not becomes, until it awakens the love in you that's there waiting to blossom and become and show up. And that is really courageous because it's me opening up my entire reservoir of love and insight into myself and to this other being, which also has this reservoir of love in them. And to see it into being, and to be willing to do what it takes to go there, and to see that person take their own new actions that will constitute their own transformation, is this very courageous path, very similar to what I was doing in violin school, which is like if you take a 3-year-old that seems to be able to do nothing and then teach them to play violin, it's that miraculous. So it's like, yes, I totally know that. I see it even when it's the parents don't see it. I absolutely see that happening. I already see it happening. It's not a question of whether or not it will happen. I see it happening. It's just, okay, come with me on this journey. Here are the steps, and I'll be with you, and I'm just going to take you along. And that is just exactly the same process as coaching, obviously with a different pattern of what the actual actions are, but the exact same, seeing it into being and having absolutely no question that it's happening. It's already happening. And so let's see it into being.